If you're thinking about moving to Hoover, Alabama, you probably want to know one thing. What does it actually cost to live here? Because on paper, Hoover sounds affordable compared to places like Nashville, Atlanta, or especially New York. But when you start adding up mortgage payments, insurance, utilities, it's not as simple as just looking at the house price. I'm Zach, a local real estate agent right here in the Birmingham metro, and I work with a lot of relocation buyers. So I'm going to give you the real numbers, not just the brochure version. So today I'm going to be breaking down the real monthly numbers, and I'm going to compare Hoover to bigger metros like Nashville, Atlanta, and even New York, so you can understand the value difference, and by the end you'll know exactly whether Hoover fits your budget or if it's going to stretch you more than you expect. Let's start with the biggest expense. Housing is where everything changes. This is the number that determines whether Hoover feels affordable or expensive. Right now, the median home value in Hoover is sitting right around $420,000 to $425,000. Now let's put that into context. Nashville's median home price, roughly $450,000 to $500,000. Atlanta Metro, around $380,000 to $420,000. And New York Metro, easily like $600,000 plus depending on the borough. So Hoover sits slightly below Nashville, roughly in line with parts of Atlanta suburbs, and dramatically below New York. Now here's where it gets real. If you buy a $425,000 home in Hoover with 10% down at today's rates around 6%, your principal and interest payment's gonna be somewhere around that $2,500 to $2,700 per month before taxes and insurance. And that surprises some people because Alabama is known as the cheap alternative, but Hoover's one of the higher priced suburbs in the Birmingham metro. It's not entry-level pricing anymore. Now let's compare that to Nashville. A $500,000 home there, you're likely pushing $3,000 to $3,300 per month before taxes and insurance. So yes, Hoover's more affordable than Nashville, but it's not small town pricing anymore. And compared to New York, you're barely getting a condo for that number. Real quick, drop a comment what your mortgage cost is and the state that you live in. Just curious. All right, let's continue. Here's where Alabama quietly wins. Property taxes. So in Hoover, they roughly run around 0.6 to 0.7% effective rate. So on a $425,000 home, that's around $2,500 to $3,000 per year. And monthly, that's like $200 to $250 a month added onto your payment. Now let's compare. So Nashville's sitting around 1%, Atlanta suburbs 0.9 to 1.2% property taxes, and New York or New Jersey suburbs 1.5 to 2% easily. So while Hoover housing prices aren't dirt cheap anymore, the tax burden is dramatically lower than most major metros. And that's one of the reasons Alabama homeowners keep more of their money long term. And I'm curious what you're paying for property taxes. Drop it in the comments and put which state you live in. All right, next up is everybody's favorite, utilities. They're usually the silent budget killer, so nobody talks about this when they're relocating. For a typical 3 to 4 bedroom home in Hoover, power, water, gas, trash is around $200 to $300 per month. Internet's like $70 to $100. Add in lawn care and pest control, that's extra. So here's the difference. Compared to Nashville or Atlanta, utilities are fairly similar. Compared to New York, energy costs there are often higher, especially heating in the winter. And before y'all come after me, I know Alabama summers are definitely gonna spike your power bill. So if you're moving somewhere cooler, budget for that. But overall, utilities in Hoover are pretty middle of the road nationally. All right, next up, we got commute and transportation. So this is where the cost isn't just the money, it's the time. The average commute in Hoover is around 25 minutes, and most people in Birmingham and the Hoover area drive alone. Now compare that to Atlanta, where 45 plus minute commutes are common, Nashville's increasingly congested, and in New York, where public transit dominates, but housing costs are extreme. Hoover sits in that sweet spot. But here's the honest part. Traffic around 459 and 280 can get pretty heavy and hectic sometimes. And if you're commuting downtown every day, you need to factor that in. So factor in gas, vehicle wear, and the time that you spend in the car. Definitely want to make sure you got some good podcasts to listen to. So if you're working remote or hybrid, Hoover probably is becoming more attractive to you financially. All right, next up, this is something that nobody's talking about right now, but we're going to go over the everyday costs in Hoover, Alabama. This is the stuff you're actually going to feel every single week. Not the mortgage, not the property taxes. I'm talking groceries, daycare, eating out, insurance, the real life expenses that quietly add up. Because this is where people relocating either feel relief or sticker shock. So for groceries, Alabama overall runs slightly below the national average. Statewide averages show groceries around $270 to $300 per person per month. For a family of 4, you're typically looking about $1,200 to $1,500 per month, depending on how you shop. Now, if you're running to Whole Foods and Publix every day, expect that number to be higher. And this is pretty competitive compared to Nashville, where grocery costs trend higher, Atlanta, similar but slightly elevated, and New York, where it's significantly higher across the board. Now, Hoover does have higher end grocery options, options. So just keep that in mind too, especially when you're making that budget. But the key thing is you're still probably below most major metros. All right, let's be honest, you're probably not going to cook every single night. So let's talk about dining and eating out in Hoover. It's very middle America pricing. So a casual meal at a standard restaurant, you're typically looking at like $12 to $18 per person. Dinner for two at a mid-range restaurant, probably closer to $75. Compare that to Nashville or Atlanta, where the same dinner can easily hit $80 to $100. New York, you're doubling it. So dining in Hoover still feels manageable for most households. Now, there are some really nice fine dining where you're probably going to pay about the same as you would in other metros as well. All right, if you got kiddos, we got to talk daycare and childcare. Now, this one definitely matters for families. Statewide averages in Alabama show infant care roughly $700 to $1,000 per month per child. Preschool age is around $650 to $900 per month. If you hire full-time private care or a nanny, that can jump like $2,000 plus per month. So compared to Nashville, $1,200 to $1,500 per month for infant care. Atlanta, similar range. New York, $2,000 to $3,000 per month. This is one of those areas where Alabama still offers a major financial advantage. And before y'all come after me again, I know it's still expensive, but compared to other cities, we're actually in a pretty good spot here in Hoover. All right, you're probably not taking the city bus or subway, so you gotta have car insurance, and you're gonna go to the doctor, so you need health insurance as well. Let's talk about what those numbers look like. Car insurance in Alabama generally trends lower than the national average. Many Hoover households report car insurance in the $120 to $180 per month per vehicle range, depending on the driving record and coverage. And health insurance varies widely depending on the employer, but overall premiums in Alabama are typically lower than the large coastal metros. You're definitely not paying New York pricing here. All right, let's tie it together with the median household income. So in Hoover, that sits around $108,000 plus per year. That's important because affordability isn't just about the price, it's about the price relative to your income. So when you compare $3,300 to $3,500 all-in housing costs, $1,200 to $1,500 groceries for a family, and $700 to $1,000 daycare per child, Hoover actually lands in a fairly balanced position relative to local income levels. Is it the cheapest place in Alabama? Definitely not. But compared to major metros like Nashville, Atlanta, or New York, especially when you factor in childcare and taxes, Hoover often feels far more sustainable long term. All right, let's put everything together now, not just the mortgage, the real monthly lifestyle numbers. And let's assume a pretty typical Hoover scenario. $425,000 home, 10% down, 6% interest rate. Here's how it stacks up. So your housing costs are your principal and interest, right around $2,600 a month. Property taxes, $225. Home insurance, $175. Utilities, including power, water, gas, trash, $250. And internet, $80. For housing and basic home costs, we're gonna do $3,330 per month. Now let's add in everyday living costs. Groceries for a family of four, $1,300. Dining out, if you eat out moderately, let's say $500. Car insurance for two vehicles, average around $300. Add in fuel and transportation, around $400. And daycare for one child, average $1,000. Now we're looking at total realistic monthly lifestyle costs, roughly around $7,000 per month. That's the full picture, not just the mortgage. Now let's compare that in Nashville, that same lifestyle, similar home price, higher property taxes, higher daycare. You're probably going to be pushing $7,500 to $8,500 per month. In Atlanta suburbs, somewhere between $7,000 to $8,000 a month. In New York suburbs, you could easily be looking at $10,000 plus per month for a comparable lifestyle. The key takeaway here is Hoover's not cheap Alabama, it's a higher end Birmingham suburb, but when you compare total lifestyle costs, especially childcare, taxes, and insurance, it's still significantly more manageable than larger metros. And when you factor in the median household income of around $108,000 here, the affordability ratio actually balances better than most people expect. And that's the part most relocation buyers miss. They compare home prices, not the total lifestyle math. So, is Hoover Alabama expensive? Compared to rural Alabama, yes. Compared to Nashville, Atlanta, or New York, it's significantly more affordable, especially when you factor in property taxes. And Hoover's definitely not the cheapest suburb in Birmingham, but it offers strong resale demand, high household income, established neighborhoods, access to amenities, and lower long-term tax burden than most major metros. So the real question isn't, is Hoover cheap? It's, does Hoover make sense for your budget and lifestyle? So if you're thinking about relocating and want me to run the numbers based on your down payment, income, and commute, reach out using the link in the description, or you can just call the number that's on the screen. I'll give you a personalized cost breakdown so you know exactly what your monthly payment would look like here, because guessing from out of state, that's how people get surprised. And I'd rather you have clarity before ever booking that moving truck. So if you found this video helpful and you want to see similar content, make sure you subscribe below, like this video, and leave a comment. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.